Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined with Mr. Alexander Osterman. Alexander is a licensed mental health professional, an author, and private practice clinician licensed in Florida, New Jersey, and Connecticut. He is the author of Quit Evading, a therapist field manual for men in drift, and his voice is direct but compassionate, clinically grounded without being sterile, and serious without drifting into abstraction. Whether in therapy, writing, or future speaking work, his focus is the same, helping people move from self-understanding into disciplined, meaningful action. So he's here. He's going to share more about his book today. He's going to share kind of what inspired him to write this book and just really have a really good open conversation. So Alexander, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. Welcome to Southern Reads.
Thank you so much for having me, Noah. I'm very excited to be here and to get an opportunity to talk with you and your audience a bit about my book and a little bit about my work.
So you are a medical licensed therapist. You've been helping so many people and helping so many men. What kind of inspired you to also become an author to kind of share this message out to more people?
Sure. So I was always growing up that kid that wanted to check on people, make sure they were doing, the new kid in class, how is he, making sure he felt comfortable. So this has always been a part of my nature, and it's partially why I got into therapy. But therapy, I can only really reach one person at a time for an hour at a time, and I only have so many hours a week. So one of the big driving focuses of making this book was how do I reach more people, help more people, and help more people move from just being aware that they're struggling to some concrete steps they can take to start making changes in their lives.
So when you were crafting kind of the book and the overall theme and message for it, did you want to try to keep a balance between personal experience versus kind of the more, I guess, the more statistical information and studies that are out there about mental health now?
So it was an interesting thing. It actually kind of started more so as a memoir. There's a lot of my own personal story in here. It kind of goes, it's weaved my own stuff and my own rebuilding through the story. So it kind of just started like that as a means for me to be like, okay, this happened to you, and here you are. And then from there, it moved into how can I go beyond just a memoir and make this transferable, which is then the psychology kind of came into it, some of the information. That's where some of the cognitive behavioral stuff, some of the stoicism stuff, some of the habits, the CBT style stuff is there. And then I started kind of getting into Carl Jung a lot. So Jung's stuff got into there. And then I wanted to really say, well, there's lots of books that talk about a person's life, and there's lots of books that talk about the psychology behind challenges and things that people are struggling a lot with. There's not so many books, though, that sit there and say, hey, if you're going through this and you're at this point in your journey, do this now. Okay, you're doing this now. Great. Do this next. And then we're going to do this. Then we're going to work on this part after that. So I really wanted to just create something that cut through just the psychology material and gave people something useful to start applying immediately to their lives.
And I think that's really important, especially in this day and age and kind of seeing how much mental health has had a huge impact on so many people and especially in this modern age. When you were writing the book, you had mentioned that, this kind of started out as a memoir. What was
Mhm.
that what was that shift like when you noticed that this was more than a memoir? You wanted this to be more of a self-help book?
So the deeper language piece would be that it had to do with just some rebuilding and kind of processing. It started out just as a means to process, and then I was probably the third or fourth draft of the book when I really took on what it is now, and that's where it really became this needs to go beyond what I'm doing here and be a means to help people. So it started simply with, hey, this is how I got here. And then kind of coming to terms with Alex, you've been through some stuff. You know what it's like to struggle with drinking too much. You know what it's like to feel your world collapse and to be totally broke. You know what it's like to face, a scary illness and have your mortality checked, and you know what it's like and what it takes to climb out of that stuff. That's something that many people struggle with and might not know what to turn. So it almost became an obligation, it felt like to me when I had that epiphany that I need to turn this into something that can help others.
So when it came to publishing the book, did you want to have kind of the typical normal um traditional publishing where you work with a publisher that's well known, or did you want to be a self-publisher to have more freedom over more freedom over releasing the book, kind of more about the editing process? How did you want to go about publishing?
So I am still trying to go more the traditional route currently. I'm figuring things out. I'm talking to and getting some other proposals out. Fingers crossed, I got to the second round with one of these publishers very recently, which has me very excited. But part of why I want to try it this way is one, this is the first time I've really written something, and I want to see what that looks like. Now, if it works out and there's not too much of, hey, we want to change the message or what you're going for, great. I'm happy to work with someone that way. If it becomes, interfering with what I think is the real core of the book, tries to turn the book into, either something that's too macho and too, you have to be tough and you have to hustle. Well, that's not what this book is. If someone tries to turn it into more of a memoir of reconstruction, well, that's not what this book is. So I'll see what happens if someone, really sees what I'm going for, trying to blend these three styles and pull them all together. That's fantastic. If not, I think a type of work that shows that there is theory behind this stuff. These are the steps to take, and here's someone that's not telling you just from as an armchair general, but someone that's walked this path. I think that's really important. So I'd like it to get published traditionally. We'll see what happens, though. The message is more important than that, though, I would say.
So far with the book being out and, what's been the overall reception that you've seen so far from people that have had that chance to go ahead and read the book?
So it's actually been very, very positive. One of the people, one of my friends down here, he's actually doing 75 hard, which is a crazy workout challenge for his fifth time, I think. So for the audience, if they're not familiar with it, you have to do two 45-minute workouts a day. One has to be outside, no alcohol. You have to stick to a diet. You have to read 10 pages a day, and you have to drink a gallon of water every day and take a picture of yourself every day. If you mess up once, you go back to start. So he's doing this again, and one of the things he needed was a book to read. So I gave him a copy of mine. I got a lot of positive feedback. He's read a lot of these style books. He liked the approach with some of these things, seeing how it differentiated. I don't know the specific quotes, they're not off the top of my head, but certain buzzwords kind of caught him, called it a page turner. And more importantly than any of those types of reactions, the reflection piece that came with it was really the important part. Reflecting on the type of man he is, am I reacting in particular ways because I am actually aware of the amount of time I have and I'm trying to be the best father I can be? These are the type of reactions that really, really speak to me that, wow, this is potentially helping people. Other people, there's a chapter 7 focuses on Jung's shadow work. That has been a very popular chapter with a lot of people. Chapter 9 was another one, which is something many people struggle with in today's day and age, is all about borders and boundaries, the types of borders and boundaries we have, and how to go about establishing them, whether they're, physical borders and boundaries, emotional borders and boundaries, time borders and boundaries. That's been really popular with people too. So it's nice to see the overall message has been well received, the prose works, and the particular chapters are calling out to people as well.
When you were crafting the book and wanted to get these help tips out there, there's so many different things that go on with mental health, and when you're a therapist, there's so many things to talk about. Was it difficult to kind of pinpoint and kind of minimize the list of what you wanted to cover in this book?
Oh, it was incredibly hard. I think I did three drafts, at least three or four outlines, and I scrapped two or three drafts and just completely started over multiple times. Certain things that were in there. Chapter three, The Man in the Mountain, was always a chapter in the book. Chapter two, The First Foothold, Making Your Bed, was always a chapter in the book. But other than that, and even those were refined multiple times, the book was scrapped many times, expanded out way, way too much, and then I tried to narrow it too much. I found that eventually I kind of caught my footing and just started. And instead of trying to focus on everything, said, let's just start here. I feel like one day I caught lightning in a bottle and was able to get the rough outline done. And then even then, the last four chapters changed, but it gave me enough to get going.
From the topics that you picked, which one speaks to you the most, or which one do you relate to the most?
The biggest, that's a really, really, really good question. For me, probably the most impactful, there was two chapters in particular, but if I had to pick one, it would be chapter five. Ego, the false friend, was the one that really spoke to me. I think where I was in my life, after my diagnosis I had, and kind of falling apart after that, more so than when I had my experience, was my ego telling me, well, they don't understand what you're going through. It's okay to slack off. It's okay not to go to class or to do the things you need to do. It's fine. So ego, the false friend, is probably the one that speaks to me the most. The ways in which our mind can justify behaviors that we might know aren't good for us, or say, hey, it's okay to just sit still because look at all these other people that are sitting still when we're not feeling so good about ourselves.
Yeah, I've been looking a lot at the themes that you have presented, and there's so many good themes that you have, like emotional honesty, responsibility, discipline, self-deception, and there's so many others in there. I think these are really important things to really talk about and really to touch on. You also kind of speak to so many different things. You talk about anxiety, you talk about men's mental health, avoidance, and all really important topics and fields. Since writing this book, being a therapist yourself, do you think that this is a topic that's really not talked about enough and is really discussed amongst other people and a kind of in this society? Do you think it's fairly much over or underappreciative?
I think that's a great question right there. I find that sometimes it's talked about, but I don't think it's talked about always the right way. I see plenty of videos, things on Instagram where, pushing hustle culture and you just have to toughen up and, this, dominate people, like almost over macho attitude towards men's mental health. And I don't think that's the right place either. Now, with that said, too, I think a lot of the times we see, the idea of toxic masculinity being something that could be challenging. And there's absolutely examples of that. But I think finding a spot somewhere in between where here's ways to build your courage, to talk about and accept your emotions. One of the greatest examples of that is when it comes to stoicism. Many people interpret stoicism as I have no emotions. I don't let emotions get in my way, which is so, so, so wrong. It's about the idea of I do have these emotions. They do impact me. I do understand when I'm feeling upset, when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling mad. But I don't let that dictate and take control of me when I act. And I think that's a space for a conversation when it comes to men's mental health. The idea of you have had stuff happen to you. These things are difficult that you've experienced. Hey, it's okay to be going through a hard time. Now let's take this first step together so that you can take this next step on your own.
What is the overall message or key takeaway that you want people to get when they read this book and when they see all these tips and tricks in there? What's the biggest takeaway that you want people to get?
So the biggest one is what kind of gets brought up in chapter 10. The book is really there to help, an individual see that they can rebuild themselves and rebuild their life. And that's fantastic. And I really hope that readers do, find through my story, through the, tactics in the book, the suggestions and the psychology behind it, a way to help them rebuild. But there is a step further that's talked about in chapter 10, and that is that this rebuilding process isn't just for you. It's for your loved ones, your family, your friends, your community, your coworkers, in a matter where you are taking care of yourself and you are bettering yourself, but it's not done entirely for the self. It's done for the betterment of the people that you interact with. Not you're doing this for them, but because you've done this, they benefit as well.
One thing that you've done that I think is really unique is that you've also kind of have read a few essays that kind of have been easily connected to the book itself. And tell me what kind of inspired you to write two of these essays, and they're both called one is Inside is Not the Same as Change, and the next one is Stoicism is Not Emotional Deadness. Now, when you were writing these two essays, was this before you had officially wrote the book, or was this in the middle? How did you write? What did these essays play a role in? How did you tie them into the book itself?
So these essays actually came after the book, trying to create some smaller stuff on my website to have access to kind of my writing style and some of my ideas. These ideas are very much throughout the book. I mean, in regards to insight is not the same as action, or just paraphrase, summarizing the title. The book's called Quit Evading. It's very clear throughout the book that you're going to have those components of the, you need to understand yourself, but there's another part to this equation as well. The Stoicism stuff is, it was a real finding stoicism meditations was a real important part for me with my reconstruction of myself. And there's quotes of Marcus Aurelius from meditations. So I believe I have Seneca in there too, scattered throughout the book. So the idea is, what really drove that one was, again, I don't want people to have the wrong idea with stoicism that it's about not having emotions, because when we hear the word stoic, that's what we think, versus a beautiful and fantastic philosophy that can truly benefit us. And I wanted to show some living examples of how I use 2,000-year-old philosophy and the 21st century to help people. I think it's cool that our ancestors created stuff so valuable that it's still useful in today's day and age.
I think that I think that being able to write these essays will also help kind of further prove the point and overall theme of the book itself. I think it's really important to have additional work tie into it. Now, um, from clients that have worked with you and, from people that you've had in your personal therapy sessions, did any of their stories kind of play and infiltrate into the book themselves? Did they kind of help inspire you to write this, or was this solely based off your own personal experience?
So there's absolutely, obviously, information for these individuals had to be, protected for confidentiality reasons. But
Yeah.
absolutely, there's a few individuals in there that I was able to get permission with, and have some of their sessions play a role in some of the work here. Uh, there's one chapter in particular, chapter 7, because shadow work can be it sounds very cool, at least in my opinion, too, but this aspect of Jungian psychology can be a little hard. I know it was hard for me initially to grasp. So in that chapter, I used my own personal examples, but I also used some of my sessions with some individuals to kind of highlight what that type of work looks like, how the persona or kind of our social mask we wear can, impact us subconsciously and lead to certain reactions in our personal lives. So there's absolutely people there with those in that chapter. So yes, answer your question shortly. Yes, there is bits of my therapeutic work in there as well.
Going forward and being able to write this kind of going in the future, do you plan on writing any more books, or is this kind of like, I've done this, I've kind of experienced this firsthand. I kind of get a sense of what the writing process is like. Where would you like to see your writing career going forward?
That's a really great question. I've started. I have thought about this. My life has gone through quite a lot of spins and, circles that I didn't expect it to. So I'm always open now, a little bit more open-minded to who knows where this road will take me. With that said, I am actually working on something else that would be kind of a hand-to-hand, go hand in hand with this book. I began the process of this, and there's a small scale example on my website, the Anti-Evasion Starter Kit, but I'm building actually a workbook too. And the idea would be that the workbook would be a 16 week program inspired by the book, the field manual chunks of the book, and kind of expanding outwards on those parts. So you'd have these 16 weeks the same way any other course could be run, but being done in a way that, all right, we're going to walk through this is your objectives for this week. Did you complete them? Let's talk about it for an hour. And then, great, let's move on to the next week. Similar to, a college course would be run. Here's your week. Here's your material. Here's your assignments to do. Great, get them done. Again, the idea behind that would be making this more actionable for individuals that wanted to go a little bit further. If they said, hey, I really like the stuff in chapter 6, The Warrior's Mind, all those details of things like habit stacking, environmental design, where can I get more of that? Well, there's the workbook that would be available. And if all that goes well, let's see what happens next. I love taking these concepts and ideas. I would love to look at them at a civilizational level beyond just the individual in the future, but that's something for way down the road as far as now goes.
Looking over all the things that you've been able to achieve and whatnot, what would you where would you like to be 10 years from now?
So 10 years from now, I would like to um, be a father like I am now, still be a father, and I'd hope for another child. I want my kids to see me as hopefully a hero to them or that a guy that's trying his best. Like to have a happy marriage and then continue doing the type of work I'm doing, seeing what that next level, that next go around of this type of work is, how I've helped people, how I've made changes to people's lives, how people have changed my life. Just more of kind of what I'm doing at higher levels of what I've been doing.
You've also had that opportunity, you've further have gone on different podcasts, you've done panels and, professional events connected to this book. How does it feel being able to get your story and get this book out there? So many people that probably desperately need it during these times.
So I'm still working on actually catching up with it. It's still totally surreal to me where I'm like, am I really doing this? But other than that, it's what you just said right there. No, it's the mission. It's trying to let people know that if you're struggling, if you're feeling down, that this doesn't have to be where your story ends. There are future chapters still to be written, even if it's something as simple as what I start out with in the book and which started my journey, which was, all right, I can control making my bed. That small step there is completely connected to every change I've made in my life. So just trying to make sure I can get to as many people as possible to let them know that you can make changes. The story's not over, and life can be in a way in a couple of years that you never would have imagined.
You kind of have this thing also on your website too that you've been able to give to people for free, and it's kind of an anti-evasion starter kit.
Yeah.
Share with me a little bit about why you wanted to share a kit with so many people, and what's the overall outcome that you hope to see when people download the kit and they try it out for themselves.
So the kit came out of the idea of kind of what I was just talking about, just making my bed, and the idea of whenever I speak with people, typically the first homework assignment is to start making your bed. If it's not, it's something else small. Make sure that your clothes are picked out for the next day. The idea behind the anti-evasion starter kit was to help people start seeing how much better they feel when instead of trying to avoid or distract themselves from those small little tasks that we all have that are annoying, how much more improved or better they feel and the relief they feel when they take that step. the whole kind of point would be that if you're able to connect it on the small scale of, hey, I did this small thing, I felt a lot better, I, tracked where I was, what I was avoiding, how my mood was before I did the thing, and I saw afterwards how my mood improved. I then rewarded myself for taking that step. Um, what that can do to how someone perceives their capabilities of making changes, and also the relief that comes through taking action instead of avoidance, which was the whole idea behind it. How do I start helping people see, oh, when I did the thing is actually when I felt better, not when I distracted myself from the thing?
With all these tools and things, do you think that this is a step in the right direction, or do you think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to the topic of mental health and people being more open-minded about discussing and going through, uh, opening up about what they're personally are dealing with?
I think there's always room to improve on opening up and talking about what people are dealing with. I also want to make sure that, we give credit to where mental health has come so far. I mean, 10, 20 years ago, you would hide that you were speaking to a therapist. And nowadays, people's openness and willingness to acknowledge that they speak to someone, it's a totally different world. I think that this stuff here and some of what I'm trying to do is just another step in the mental health journey. I think that it's come a long way. I think that there's always going to be work to do. And what I'm trying to push with my step is insight is fantastic, insight is necessary, but insight can't be everything.
Out of all the topics and all the work that you do, how do you keep yourself grounded and how do you kind of focus on you while also trying to be there for others, whether it's through these interviews when you're doing promoting your book, working with clients? How do you keep yourself grounded so that you can say positively happy and that you can be there for when people need you the most?
That's a very good question. They emphasize it in school, and it's only when you really get into the field do you realize how necessary it is self-care. Self-care being, making sure you sleep enough, making sure you're eating as best as you can. Now, me, for example, I'm totally sober, no drinking, no drugs, no nicotine, anything. That's one of the things that helps me stay sharp. Uh, regular exercise, sleep, and turning the brain off at periods of time. When I'm out of this chair and I'm out of this office, obviously, if there's an emergency, I step in, but I separate myself from that and I line up that taking that time to do something with my family or to have fun for a little bit. That's what's going to help me be better at what I do. So, if I want to help people, I also have to make sure and emphasize those self care components for myself.
Well, Alexander, I appreciate you so much for coming on the podcast today to share your story, share what you've been able to achieve, and you've. I think the work that you're doing is so important. I think a lot of people are going to find so much worth in it, and I think that this book will help so many others be able to get through that really tough time. For people that are interested, if they would like to learn more about you, if they would like to follow you and support you and get the book, where can they go to learn more information?
Sure. So the best place would be my website, which is alexanderosterman.com. The other best place would be my Instagram channel, which is just, at Alexander Osterman. I'm actually going to, and I just posted the first one today. I'm going to start posting some of the worksheets that I've used with clients before. Today, I just put up my therapeutic grounding techniques. So there'll be not only, clips, quotes, things that I've done with people, things from the book that are there to help people. There'll be some actual tangible worksheets for people to download with explanations that they can use kind of in tandem with stuff like the anti-evasion starter kit to start challenging some of the difficulties they're working through.
And I will put all this information in the description box below. Links to his website, his socials will be down there. So feel free to just check his links out, and you'll find all these tools and all these great, great things that he has going on. So just check out his website. Will be linked below. Feel free to follow the podcast on the socials. You can also reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at southern.reads. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcasts. And feel free to also check out my website, noahspodcasts.com, to learn more about this show as well as the other podcasts that I do. Um, I appreciate you all so much for tuning in today's episode. Feel free to subscribe and follow so you get notified of when new episodes come out. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will see you in the next episode of Southern Reads.